bare flats and climbed the rocky desert benches. The great colored reaches and steps had led endlessly onward and upward through dim and deceiving distance. 100 miles of desert travel, with its mistakes and lessons and intimidations, had not prepared him for what he now saw. He beheld what seemed a world that knew only magnitude. Wonder and awe fixed his gaze, and thought remained aloof. Then that dark and unknown Northland flung a menace at him. An irresistible call had drawn him to this seamed and peaked border of Arizona, this broken, battlemented wilderness of Utah upland. And at first sight they frowned upon him, as if to warn him not to search for what lay hidden beyond the ranges. But Shefford thrilled with both fear and exultation. That was the country which had been described to him. Far across the Red Valley, far beyond the ragged line of Black Mesa and Yellow Range, lay the wild canyon with its haunting secret. Red Lake must be his Rubicon. Either he must enter the unknown to seek, to strive, to find, or turn back and fail, and never know, and be always haunted. A friend's strange story had prompted his singular journey. A beautiful rainbow with its mystery and promise had decided him. Once in his life he had answered a wild call to the kingdom of adventure within him. And once in his life he had been happy. But here in the horizon-wide face of that upflung and cloven desert, he grew cold. He faltered even while he felt more fatally drawn. As if impelled, Shefford started his horse down the sandy trail, but he checked his former far-reaching gaze. It was the month of April, and the waning sun lost heat and brightness. Long shadows crept down the slope ahead of him, and the scant sage deepened its gray. He watched the lizards shoot like brown streaks across the sand, leaving their slender tracks. He heard the rustle of pack rats as they darted into their brushy homes. The whir of a low-sailing hawk startled his horse. Like ocean waves, the slope rose and fell, its hollows choked with sand, its ridge-tops showing scantier growth of sage and grass and weed. The last ridge was a sand dune, beautifully ribbed and scalloped and lined by the wind, and from its knife-sharp crest a thin wavering sheet of sand blew, almost like smoke. Shefford wondered why the sand looked red at a distance, for here it seemed almost white. It rippled everywhere, clean and glistening, always leading down. Suddenly, Shefford became aware of a house looming out of the bareness of the slope. It dominated that long white incline. Grim, lonely, forbidding, how strangely it harmonized with the surroundings. The structure was octagon-shaped, built of uncut stone, and resembled a fort. There was no door on the sides exposed to Shefford's gaze, but small apertures 2/3 the way up probably served as windows and portholes. The roof appeared to be made of poles covered with red earth. Like a huge cold rock on a wide plain, this house stood there on the windy slope. It was an outpost of the trader Presbrey, of whom Shefford had heard at Flagstaff and Tuba. No living thing appeared in the limit of Shefford's vision. He gazed shudderingly at the unwelcoming habitation, at the dark, eye-like windows, at the sweep of barren slope merging into the vast Red Valley, at the bold, bleak bluffs. Could anyone live here? The nature of that sinister valley forbade a home there, and the spirit of the place hovered in the silence and space. Shefford thought irresistibly of how his enemies would have consigned him to just such a hell. He thought bitterly and mockingly of the narrow congregation that had proved him a failure in the ministry, that had repudiated his ideas of religion and immortality and God, that had driven him, at the age of 24, from the calling forced upon him by his people. As a boy, he had yearned to make himself an artist. His family had made him a clergyman. Fate had made him a failure. A failure only so far in his life, something urged him to add. For in the lonely days and silent nights of the desert, he had experienced a strange birth of hope. Adventure had called him, but it was a vague and spiritual hope, a dream of promise, a nameless attainment that fortified his wilder impulse. As he rode around a corner of the stone house, his horse snorted and stopped. A lean, shaggy pony jumped at sight of him, almost displacing a red, long-haired blanket that covered an Indian saddle. Quick thuds of hooves in sand drew Shefford's attention to a corral made of peeled poles, and here he saw another pony. Shefford heard subdued voices. He dismounted and walked to an open door. In the dark interior he dimly descried a high counter, a stairway, a pile of bags of flour, blankets, and silver-ornamented objects. But the persons he had heard were not in that part of the house. Around another corner of the octagon-shaped wall, he found another open door, and through it saw goatskins and a mound of dirty sheep-wool, black and brown and white. It was light in this part of the building. When he crossed the threshold, he was astounded to see a man struggling with a girl, an Indian girl. She was straining back from him, panting, and uttering low guttural sounds. The man's face was corded and dark with passion. This scene affected Shefford strangely. Primitive emotions were new to him. Before Shefford could speak, the girl broke loose and turned to flee. She was an Indian, and this place was the uncivilized desert, but Shefford knew terror when he saw it. Like a dog, the man rushed after her. It was instinct that made Shefford strike, and his blow laid the man flat. He lay stunned a moment, then raised himself to a sitting posture, his hand to his face, and the gaze he fixed upon Shefford seemed to combine astonishment and rage. "I hope you're not Presbrey," said Shefford slowly. He felt awkward, not sure of himself. The man appeared about to burst into speech, but repressed it. There was blood on his mouth and his hand. Hastily, he scrambled to his feet. Shefford saw this man's amaze and rage change to shame. He was tall and rather stout. He had a smooth, tanned face, soft of outline, with a weak chin. His eyes were dark. The look of him and his corduroys and his soft shoes gave Shefford an impression that he was not a man who worked hard. By contrast with the few other worn and rugged desert men Shefford had met, this stranger stood out strikingly. He stooped to pick up a soft felt hat, and, jamming it on his head, he hurried out. Shefford followed him and watched him from the door. He went directly to the corral, mounted the pony, and rode out, to turn down the slope toward the south. When he reached the level of the basin, where evidently the sand was hard, he put the pony to a lope and gradually drew away. "Well," ejaculated Shefford. He did not know what to make of this adventure. Presently he became aware that the Indian girl was sitting on a roll of blankets near the wall. With curious interest, Shefford studied her appearance. She had long, raven-black hair, tangled and disheveled, and she wore a soiled white band of cord above her brow. The color of her face struck him. It was dark, but not red nor bronzed. It almost had a tinge of gold. Her profile was clear-cut, bold, almost stern. Long black eyelashes hid her eyes. She wore a tight-fitting waist garment of material resembling velveteen. It was ripped along her side, exposing a skin still more richly gold than that of her face.